Welcome to Arise with Christ. I'm Carolee Bailey.
And I'm Angeli Plojek. We share stories and truths related to the temple. Together with you, our hope is to fortify faith in Jesus Christ and experience joy in covenant keeping. In the Family Proclamation, we read, "Sacred ordinances and covenants available in holy temples make it possible for individuals to return to the presence of God and for families to be united eternally."
Our guest, Michelle Hansen, is a humble, gentle, and kind disciple. Her son, Drew, was 13 years old when he unexpectedly passed away in July of 2023.
Drew's obituary describes him as a beautiful, talented, smart, obedient, and kind boy who is active in all good things that life had to offer. Drew's short life was filled with happiness. He had a native cheery disposition and a winning smile.
Michelle knows the ache of having a child on the other side of the veil. We marvel at her capacity to deliver pure testimony of our Savior's plan of happiness and her ability to keep an eternal perspective.
In this conversation, Michelle also shares powerful stories from her family joining the church in Japan and of missionary work.
Elder Hans T. Boom said, "All of us, whether we are the first generation in the gospel or the fifth, should ask ourselves, what stories of faith, strength, and celestial commitment will I pass on to the next generation?"
Carolee, I love the phrase celestial commitment. Hearing Michelle's stories of her family history made me think of my own family's stories of strength and celestial commitment.
Yeah, Angeli, and Michelle is such a strong link in her family's chain of faith. Like her parents and grandparents before her, she has sacrificed to follow Jesus and trust in God's plan, pointing her children to Him.
Michelle's husband once gave her a shirt that says, "Having a weird mom builds character." She wears it with pride. Michelle Hansen is a mother of 6 children. She grew up in Orem, Utah, and graduated from Orem High School. She served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ in São Paulo, Brazil. She later graduated from Brigham Young University with an undergraduate degree in music education and a master's degree in Clarinet Performance before marrying Bruce Hansen and raising her family. She has worked as a flight attendant for United Airlines and currently teaches piano, clarinet, and early music concepts to young children. Michelle has played clarinet for the Orchestra at Temple Square since 2007. She also enjoys cooking, playing tennis, and serving in her local community.
Michelle, thank you so much for letting us be here in your home today.
Thank you. It's fun.
Well, it's a treat for us to get to spend time with you and get to visit with you. You're someone that we both admire, and we are excited to get to know you even more. One of the things that I know about you, and I think how I first met you, is through a little music class that you did that my kids came to. And then I learned that you're also a fabulous musician. Will you just tell us a little bit about your musical background? And I know we're making you talk instead of play an instrument, but we want you to talk today.
So I started in all the lessons that my parents thought were important for their kids, and I guess I just kept going. I started playing the clarinet in 5th grade, and it's a little more fun to play a band instrument because you're with people and not just by yourself practicing all the time. And so I just kept playing and practicing, and I majored in music at BYU. I did music education, and then I did clarinet performance later, and I've always taught clarinet and piano lessons, and I play in the orchestra at Temple Square right now, and that is a huge blessing and really fun. And I mean, it's mostly fun because I get to see the people I went to school with and see my other music friends often, but also it's such a great chance to feel the Spirit through music. And it's such a treat to just be there right in the middle of it all and hear that amazing sound and to hear the power of the words and the testimony and the strength of the people in the group.
What does it look like when you're in the orchestra at Temple Square? What's your kind of weekly commitment with that?
So the woodwinds don't play that often because there's usually 2 clarinets in the orchestra every week, and there's about 8 of us, so we rotate. So I play about once a month. And if I'm going to play the broadcast that Sunday, then I go up to the rehearsal on Thursday night. And that's it. Just Thursday and Sunday. And I mean, other people do more. The choir has to be there 80% of the time, and the strings are there as much as they can be. But for the winds and brass, it's nice because we don't have to play every week. We just get to do what we love to do, and it doesn't have to take away, from our callings in the awards or our involvement in our awards, and that's really nice.
That is amazing that there are 8 of you that you can share that responsibility with. And I didn't know that we had that shared connection of both playing the clarinet in the 5th grade.
Oh.
However, I didn't progress beyond the 5th grade. So I really admire that.
It's not too late.
Yeah, I think it is.
I love it. Well, you are a skilled musician with diverse experiences in music, but you also have other interesting experiences in your life. Will you just tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and a little bit about your family that you came from?
Sure. So my mom is from Maui. She joined the church probably, I think, early 20s. She came to the mainland to go to school, and she had babysat for a family that was members of the church, and they had sent a Book of Mormon with her, and she called to thank them for it. And then they said, "Oh, we have people we want you to meet." And so they sent the missionaries, and she joined the church. And then she went to Rick's College, and from there decided to go on a mission. And she was called to Brazil, São Paulo. And my dad is from Japan. He came over as a college student to go to BYU. And he was called on his mission to Brazil. So my parents met there, and they dated, not on their mission, and a while after their missions. But they always spoke in secret in Portuguese when we were little. And we grew up knowing the important words like ice cream. And I got my mission call also to Brazil. So that was really neat, something that we all have in common. My dad's family joined the church in Japan when he was 2, I think. His dad worked for the government at the time, and he had a really prestigious job. And so his good friend, who was my grandma's brother, set them up. And the brother set up his sister with this guy who had this great job. And she was just promised this great future, with plenty of money and good place in life. And my grandpa, I think he was just searching for truth, maybe not even a religion, but he ended up meeting missionaries in Japan, and he immediately believed everything they said. And he joined the church and quit his government job. And that was hard on the family because they all had to go to work. There were 6 children and my grandma. And in Japan, that's just kind of frowned upon, for the woman to have to go out and work. And so he wanted to just quit his job and go around and tell people about the church. And so everyone else kind of had to scramble, but he was a very powerful missionary and did a lot for the growth of the church. It was so new in Japan at that time. And he had a great influence on a lot of people. He became the first patriarch in Asia, and then gave lots of patriarchal blessings. And I've met so many people here who know him or knew him in Japan. So there's a book called Pioneers in Every Land, and he's the pioneer from Japan. And my dad wrote that chapter about his life. And, he was kind of in the Book of Mormon when we read about Lehi being this visionary man and just kind of crazy to the public. I kind of see where my grandpa was like that, just a little bit different, a little quirky, and not quite, following what society was doing, but he definitely had a vision, and he pulled his family along with him. My grandma wasn't baptized at the same time. She waited a while, but it has definitely changed our family, and I'm very grateful for his willingness to do that.
That's an incredible legacy.
Yeah.
And your grandpa had so much courage. Was his quitting his job his choice because he wanted to dedicate time to teaching the gospel, or was he pressured out of it because he changed religion?
I think mostly his choice.
Okay.
He wanted to spend time just telling people about Christ. In Japanese society, there's a lot of social pressure to drink and to do whatever they have to do in the corporate world. And I know he didn't love, drinking or even the tea that's ceremonial. He didn't do that. So I think he was kind of uncomfortable there, but I don't know. I think mostly he had this drive to just tell people about the church.
When I picture your family in Japan in that time period, it makes me think of this quote from President Oaks from his most recent conference talk, where he said, "In times past, one of the great influences that united families was the experience of struggling together in pursuit of a common goal, such as taming the wilderness or earning a living. The family was an organized and conducted unit of economic production. Today, most families are units of economic consumption, which do not require a high degree of family organization and cooperation." But it sounds like your family became an organized unit of economic production to weather that change in lifestyle and circumstances.
They definitely bonded as a family. And I think maybe the times were like that back then, but also, they had these missionaries, American missionaries, who encouraged the children to come to Utah, come to BYU and study. And one by one they did. And they, back then the travel was by boat, and Japan and the US were enemies. And that was really hard for my grandma to give up her sons to this country that was, not the friend. And to just watch that boat sail away, with her children slowly one after another, just sounds really tough. But they supported each other. They helped each other pay for their missions. They wrote letters. They ended up being SEALs as a family in the Hawaii Temple later, and doing a big road trip around the U.S., as a family. And they cooked together. They shopped together. They kind of took care of each other because the parents were kind of busy, and they just taught each other and worked together. And I think that, it ended up being a great thing for their family.
Did your dad or any of his siblings return to Japan after they came and went to school here?
That was always the plan. And my dad, maybe he's stopped thinking about that, but that was always his dream, to go back to Japan and help out the people. But they've mostly come to Utah and stayed. One of the brothers has served 5 missions in Japan, and lived in Japan. And one of the sisters went back to Japan, but mostly they've come to the U.S., and most of my cousins speak English, and most of us don't speak Japanese. So yeah, it definitely changed in one generation.
Yeah. Yeah. But is this right? Do you have kids that have served their missions in Japan?
Yeah, our oldest was called to Japan, but he never made it during COVID.
Oh.
And then the second one did. He went to Japan. And a lot of my cousins' kids have served in Japan. And my sister's sons have served in Japan. So, yeah, it's neat.
That's beautiful.
We're kind of getting back and learning the culture and the language and doing missionary work there. So,
Do you speak some Japanese?
I studied Japanese in college. And my dad taught Japanese at BYU for that whole time. So he didn't necessarily teach us, but he took us to Middlebury College, where he taught in the summers an intensive language program. And so my siblings and I all learned Japanese there. And then my brother and sister went to Japan on their missions. So I think we've kind of learned where our roots are.
Yeah, lots of back and forth there. That's right.
Well, speaking of back and forth, will you tell us a little bit more about the back and forth that you've done to and from Japan over the years in your job?
Oh, so I got a job. I was doing my master's degree at BYU, and a recruiter from Continental Airlines called my dad looking for students who spoke Japanese. And he just happened to mention it at the dinner table, and he looked at me and he's like, maybe you should do this job since you're not doing anything else, basically. So I became a flight attendant for Continental, and I did the flights to Japan from Newark, New Jersey. And I did it for about 2 years. And then after September 11th, they didn't need that many flight attendants. So I took a leave, and then that leave just turned into a lot of leaves. And I pretty much stayed on leave for the next 15 years. I mean, I'd go back here and there and do a trip or two, but then the company merged with United Airlines, and then they offered an early out retirement. And so I took that after not really working. But I was able to go to Japan a lot of times, and I learned really good airplane Japanese. And yeah, I can understand chicken and beef really well.
You never know when that's going to come in super handy.
I love that. I love that you had the opportunity because of your language skill.
It was really fun. When I studied at Middlebury College during the summer, my dad taught some of the classes, and it was really neat to see him in action and to see what he does and see how good he is at it. And that was worth it, just to interact with him like that. And I also got to speak to my grandparents in Japanese, and before they died, I luckily learned it soon enough, and it was really great to be able to talk to them in Japanese, and to also, so much of the culture is embedded in the language, and I feel like I understood them, and I could recognize that it's in me, just the heritage of their language and the culture, their customs, is in their language. And so that was definitely great.
That's really beautiful, Michelle. I love how you articulated that. Speaking of your family and the connection to your dad and your mom, you mentioned earlier that you and your parents all serve missions in Brazil. Will you tell us a little bit more about that? And I know you have a really kind of unique, amazing story related to mission service in Brazil. Will you share that with us?
Yeah, so when I got my call to Brazil, I just thought, this is not where I wanted to go. I studied Japanese so I could go to Japan on my mission. And also because I studied music, I thought if I go anywhere in Europe, it's going to help out my musical career, just learning German or Italian or for anything, When I got my call to Brazil, I just thought, okay, I am going on this mission for the Lord. This is not for me. It's not all about me. And Brazil ended up being the perfect place for me, for my personality and just their culture. I just love Brazil. And I think I had a really unique experience because my parents both served there. And, at the time they went, there were 3 missions. And when I went, there were 28 missions in Brazil. And I served in the areas where they both knew people and had worked with people. So This lady appeared in the church one day, and she told me, she said, "Are you Michelle? It was your mom, Rosalind?" She said, "I was an 8-year-old girl, and your mom found us on the streets, and she took us to church, she and my 3 brothers. And then after that one time at church, she was transferred. But the elders who took her place came to our house, and we ended up being baptized, and the whole family joined the church. Her dad, he worked in the bar, and he had, it's just he was a great personality. He ended up becoming a branch president, and he said that there were over 200 baptisms during the time that he was a branch president. Wow. Because of all his contacts and friends, and the man who gave me a ride to her house, because she just appeared in my church building, and then she invited me to her house, and our bishop gave me a ride to her house, like on a P-Day, and he said, "Oh, Jeanette Archiza? She's the one who I met in college, and she introduced me to the church." So I could just see through my mission the effects of one person serving a mission and taking an 8-year-old girl to primary. That led to so many baptisms and so many people joining the church. And when people would say no, they didn't want to hear our message, I would just think, okay, my children will come back and finish up my mission for me. You just never know. So yeah, my mom had a lot of great experiences, and then I met her people, and then my dad also, he was called, when he got his mission call, he expected to go back to Japan also because he spoke the language, he planned on helping his people and all that. And then he wrote a letter to the First Presidency saying, you have this mission call wrong. And they said, no, your mission president actually asked for a Japanese-speaking missionary, because at that time, there were a lot of Japanese people in Brazil who didn't speak Portuguese. And the mission president said, we really need someone who can speak Japanese. So he was specially requested, and he went, and the mission president told him when he got there, he could just go anywhere and find the Japanese people and teach them. And when I was there on my mission, a member showed me Liahona from years back, and it had his picture talking about this Japanese missionary who did gospel doctrine classes or Sunday school in Japanese. So he was definitely needed, and he did a lot of great things. There's an area of São Paulo that is called Liberdade, and it has all Japanese. It's just this area that's all Japanese descendants. And so he served there, and there's a neat story of him. One time he found this family, and they had 3 daughters, the Sato family, and they wanted to have their daughters baptized. And the dad said, well, it doesn't matter what church, any church is fine. We just know baptism is important. And so he said, okay, maybe you should just hear these discussions, hear these lessons with your daughters so you know what they're agreeing to and what they're learning. And so they agreed, and they listened to the missionaries, and then there was a fireside that they had for all the friends listening to the messages, and they said, okay, we're going to go around the room, and everyone's going to talk about how they met the missionaries. And this man said, well, this is not the first time I'm hearing about the church. I met this man in Japan who told me about the church and invited me to church. And my dad knew they were from Sendai, where his family lived when he was little. And he said, if I bring a picture of this man that invited you to church, would you remember him? And Mr. Sato said, yes, because the same man asked me twice to go to church. He invited me, on the bus. He gave me the pamphlet and told me about church. So my dad, sure enough, the next week took this picture of his family, and the man said, yep, that's the man who invited me to church. And he said, I can't believe that God would send someone all the way around the world to find me again and to take me to church. And so the whole family was baptized. And then my dad kind of lost contact with them until I got my mission call. And it was a little bit before he met someone who knew them. So he was kind of in contact with them. And then I got my mission call to Brazil, São Paulo North, which was the mission where they live. And so I got permission from my mission president to visit them. And the last month of my mission, I was transferred into the city. They didn't have any sisters in the city at that time because São Paulo's dangerous and housing's tough. And yeah, they just didn't have any sisters. But the last month of my mission, they moved sisters in. And so I ended up living in this apartment that didn't have anything in it. And it wasn't even in our area. But I met the Sato family at the temple, and they said, we'd love to take you to our house for lunch. And, it was in my mission, so it was fine. It was like a P-Day. And we drove right by our apartment where we were living. And they just lived on the other side of this freeway from where we were living, which, São Paulo is a huge city. There's 5 missions in São Paulo. Wow. North, east, west, south, and then Interlagos. So it's just, not really a coincidence, that I happened to go to the very mission where they lived and then live just, across the street from them. And one of the daughters she had married a non-member, and they had one daughter together, and she had been, the daughter was 13. She'd been going to church kind of off and on for the last year. And the family was kind of active, in and out. But I asked her if she wanted us to teach her the lessons. And so we did. My companion and I taught her, and she was baptized just like a week before I came home. So it's just amazing to think the ties that our family has to their family, and just to think that God orchestrated that whole thing is just amazing. You just think he is so powerful. He can do anything. A year after I returned from my mission, we went down there, my parents and my grandpa, and we visited the Sato family, and they had just been sealed as a family, which was really, really neat. And then soon after, my grandpa and that man died, but they sat on the couch together and sang songs together and just talked about the old days and living in Japan. And I think it was a really great experience for all of us.
Yeah, that's incredibly touching, and just reminds me that God is so good. and he just cares so much. All of those tender mercies, all of those miracles lined up in their touch points with your family. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah, 3 generations, lined up with 3 generations.
My goodness.
It really is amazing. Yep. The individual is so known and important to God. I feel like that I've always known that, but experiencing that, living that story has just confirmed to me how much God knows us. He loves us. He cares for us. He sends people to help us, and He is so good. Through the rest of my life, I've always looked back to that story and just thought, this is not a coincidence. Nothing we do is really a coincidence. The people we meet, the lives we touch, it's all known to God. And that's definitely been a big testimony builder to me, to that story, Just that it happened once and it happens every day. It continues to happen. And, they're not coincidences to God.
Hearing you express that faith and confidence in God, I think for me is especially inspiring, given some of the other things that I know that you've experienced in life. It's touching to me that you're able to speak so profoundly and clearly about that faith and trust in God in light of having lost a child. Your son Drew passed away a couple years ago. That was completely unexpected, out of the blue. Is that something you'd be willing to tell us a little bit about Drew and your experience navigating that and experiencing having a child on the other side of the veil?
Well, Drew's an amazing child. I knew from when he was little that he was special. My husband and I, he was the 5th out of our 6 kids, and my husband and I kind of thought, yeah, I think maybe we figured out this parenting thing. Our 5th one is so great. But turns out it wasn't us. He just came good. All of our kids are really good. But, from a young age, Drew would thank us for all kinds of little things. And I just was always shocked, why is he thanking me for this, Like we'd go on vacation and he'd say, thank you for bringing me here, Mom. I just thought, who says that at this age, But he was definitely a special boy, a mature, wise soul in a little body. He kind of had some asthma problems, like exercise-induced asthma, but he loved to run. Ever since he was little, he loved to run. He was fast. His brothers and sister did cross country, and he just couldn't wait for the day when he could do that, could run. And so the coach of Timpanogos High School invited the junior high kids to go practice with the team. And he was thrilled beyond measure. He was just so excited to run with the big boys. So he was running that summer 2 years ago, and he had passed out before running, and just a couple weeks before that, and we didn't know. I actually wasn't too worried because I just thought, well, he has this asthma. He was just learning how to use this inhaler, and his brothers also had exercise-induced asthma, and it just went away. And so I wasn't too worried about it, but I probably should have been. But he was so joyful and just happy. And so, how can you stop that? So he was out running and he collapsed, and I did not think for a minute that he wouldn't just pop back up. But when I look back now, I just think, yep, he was already so great. He didn't need to learn all the lessons in life that we came here to learn. He was already such a great spiritual strength and a just wise guy. And I happened to be driving by where he collapsed, and I do remember in that moment thinking, God has helped me so many times. And I know that there are no coincidences in life and that things are planned. And I know that, this was the plan for him. And I feel like God held us in his hands and said, this is going to hurt, but I'm going to make it as nice as I can.
for you, and you will feel that this was the plan, that I'm in charge, that I know what I'm doing. And I definitely have felt that through this experience. And when I go to the temple, I feel so much more strongly the power of the covenants we've made. I guess you just hold to what you can, because that's just such a hope, that we'll see him again, that we'll be together as a family, that he's doing good things on the other side of the veil, that God loves us, that he has this plan for us, and that he gave us these covenants to help us get through this life, to give us his hope, to give us the promises that we'll see our loved ones again. And it's better to have that hope. How would it be if I didn't have that hope? Even if I get to the other side and learn otherwise, I will still have lived with the hope that I will see Drew again. And that's really great.
Michelle, you're incredible. Thank you. What a beautiful testimony and articulate description of the plan of salvation and the hope we have in Jesus. He is mighty to save, and even a mother's heart can be comforted in tragic circumstances. And your expressions of faith are just so beautiful and inspiring to me.
I can't imagine what that would have been like for you and your family. And so thank you so much for being willing to talk about it with us. Sometimes I wonder how it's possible to find peace and joy in such heartbreaking situations. One of my favorite quotes from President Nelson from his talk, Joy and Spiritual Survival, is this: "Just as the Savior offers peace that passeth all understanding, he also offers an intensity, depth, and breadth of joy that defy human logic or mortal comprehension. For example, it doesn't seem possible to feel joy when your child suffers with an incurable illness, or when you lose your job, or when your spouse betrays you. Yet, that is precisely the joy the Savior offers." I'm wondering if you can just teach us a little bit about the process of finding peace and hope and even joy. It's hard for me to even say that, but even joy through our Savior amidst such tragedy and heartache.
There is joy. I mean, sending children on missions is hard too. And I just think, well, sure, I would love to have my child here, but they are learning so much and getting so much from this experience. And why would I want them anywhere else than on this mission? And I think the same thing with Drew. I just think he is doing great things. And life is tough. And why would I want him to have to suffer and to experience mortality, which, getting old and just all the things that come with being human on the earth. It's just so nice, comforting to know that he won't have to suffer, that he's in a great place. It's tough. I think the first little while, it's hard because you still expect them to walk in the door or to be there at the dinner table. And that adjustment is hard. But with time, talking to other people about their experiences, reading the scriptures, I think you get this deeper meaning to life. When things happen to other people or me, and it seems like a big deal, I just think, but in the eternal perspective, this is not that important. This is not a big deal. And I think it's just helped me have a bigger awareness and vision of life. It's a hard experience, but I have learned a lot. And I've gained a lot. And I hope that I have grown from it all.
Well, you're a pillar of strength, and I appreciate learning from women like you.
Michelle, you mentioned sending children on missions and the challenge that is as well. What can you share with us about your experiences of being a missionary mom?
Oh, it's just so great to have your children experience life and just to see their testimonies grow. It's such a great program of the church to have these youth who are in the middle of doing their careers or figuring out what they want to do with themselves. They have this time, they have these ideas, and then to send them on a mission when they are, just learning and growing themselves, it's just such a great program. It's been really great to see my children grow and learn the scriptures, to see how other people live. My daughter, she said, do you know not everybody does, I can't remember what she said. So, she always has these funny things like, not every family does this, because this is what she knows. And, I know, for Thanksgiving, she said, do you know not everybody goes around and says what they're thankful for? So many things that she grew up with, she just kind of thought the whole world did this, and it's good for them to see other families doing different things. And I remember as a missionary myself thinking, when I am a mother, I'm going to do this and this and this. This makes so much sense. And so missions are so good in so many ways. But also, I think the most important thing is they learn the joy of service, and they see how the greatest blessings in life really do come from the gospel. Changing your life to align yours with what the gospel teaches brings true happiness. And to see it in real life, and to see those experiences and see people who've made the wrong choices, and you just really get a good feeling for what you want to do with your life. And it's really fun to watch as a parent. And I'm grateful for the missionary program, for the experiences our children have had, for the great companions they've had, and the great mission presidents, the speakers, all the things that have influenced their missionary service. It's been, nothing that I could have given them at home.
I think that way too. Like, they're gleaning so much that I could never teach them as a mom.
Yep.
And that's because they're learning it from their Heavenly Father.
Yep.
Yeah.
So true.
I'm curious, Michelle, I'm remembering that one of your sons was in Japan on his mission when Drew passed away. Is that right?
Yeah. So Tice was serving in Japan. The rest of our family had gone to Japan just the day before. My parents and then his siblings had gone to Japan just to travel. And we had just spent the 4th of July together, and then their visas didn't come, but then they came. And so they just left the day before. And then Drew died on Friday, and they had just gotten there. And, ended up, again, being so amazing because they were able to go up to his mission. He was serving close to the temple, and they went to the temple grounds and just had a family meeting. He and his siblings, his grandparents, and his cousins. And what a great blessing that is, that they could be there for him. Really, so many little miracles that all fell into place.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Your family's missionary experiences have also included a nephew who was a missionary and died on his mission. Is that right?
That's right. My sister, her second son, went to the same mission that Tice did. He was supposed to go to that mission, Sapporo, and he was waiting for his visa in Texas. He and his companion were out driving. He was just 5 months into his mission, and his companion had just returned to the mission after being home for a year. This was during COVID times. It was a bad rainstorm, and they were just hit and killed instantly. That was hard. My oldest was on his mission at the time. And so for my daughter, we're hoping that there's no deaths. Yeah. A lot of touch with heaven, I feel like, in our family's missionary service. My sister, again, huge coincidence, but not. She was the first one in the hospital when Drew was taken there. And I just thought, here's my sister who's experienced the exact same thing that I did, here to come for me. And, that was another little miracle. So, like I said, God did everything he could to make it softer, soften the blow.
Wow.
If it's at all possible, I feel like he really helped us get through it. And I've talked to a lot of people with the same experiences who have not had such a calming peace around their experience. And I'm just so grateful that God is so merciful to us. I don't think he loves them any less. It's just how it worked out. And it's very comforting to me.
Michelle, you're talking about this strength that comes and the tender, comforting power of our Savior's atonement that has come into your life, and so many sacred and really incredibly tough experiences. Looking at that from a covenantal point of view, what are some things that you've learned from living and keeping and honoring your temple covenants?
It's just comforting and just great to know that there is a plan for us. And, I went to the temple this morning and I listened to the covenants that we make, and I thought, these are kind of hard things to promise to do, but man, the blessings are just so great. They're blessings not for just this life, although it brings so much peace to this life. We can think about the promises that we're given if we just do our best and hold to our covenants in this life, no matter our situation in life. It's fair. It will all be made right. And that's a great promise. And to have that assurance and to receive that confirmation by the Spirit every time we go to the temple or pray is just such a nice thing that we can have in mortality.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing such beautiful words and thoughts and feelings with us, and being willing to share those most sacred experiences from your life. So profound in their beauty and depth. I just feel very fed by the Spirit, by your faith and goodness, and encouraged in my own efforts to look at my circumstances or difficulties with joy. So thank you for your perspective and experience and openness today. I mean, I am just so, from your grandpa to your parents to your own personal covenant journey and your kids, you've given so much to building the kingdom in beautiful ways. And it's been a real blessing to me, and I'm super grateful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We want to close with our final question. How would you encourage someone to arise with Christ?
I kind of look back to days, there have been some hard days recently, but I remember I got married a little bit later. I was almost 27, which, that's not really old, but I was at BYU that whole time, and at BYU, that's old. And I just remember thinking, I really want to get married. I think this is a righteous desire. I'm doing a lot of great things, and this is fun, but I know that this is not really what's important, and I would love to get on and do what I really know is important and have children and get married. And, I knew that was important, but to be patient and wait for that was hard. And, there's all kinds of hard things that you go through. And I don't know if any of the hards are harder than any other, but it's so worth it to wait on the Lord and to believe his promises and to know they will all work out. And you can just always trust that God will make it right, that he is all powerful to save, that our older brother understands us, that he's paid the price for us to return to live with him. And having that faith and trust is what keeps us going, I hope. It's worth it. It's a reason to believe. It's to have that hope is better than anything else we could have. Christ can bring so much peace and joy to our lives, and it's a good promise to live with.
We're so glad you joined us today. Arise with Christ is all about connecting with others and growing in faith. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who could benefit from it. Your support really means the world to us. Follow us on Instagram at arise.with.christ for inspiration and community.